establish accommodations. What I want you to know is that ultimately, ADS, most people think about the buckets of accommodations we use or establish are really in academics. And so, but what does that mean? I really want all of you to think about the different buckets of academics, and that could vary greatly based on what program you're in, or if you change your major, or even if you think of your own research interests. So ADS and academic accommodations, it's not just extra time on exams or assistance with note taking. It goes beyond that. And so the vocabulary words that I use, I have everything, excuse me, I call it academic adjacent and also experiential learning. So just kind of by either show of hands or thumbs up, how many of you in your current program have to do some type of internship? Couple of you. Okay. So ADS can help establish disability accommodations for that. It's again, not just your standard lectures. And then we also can help folks across the gamut. So I know in SGA, where all of you are undergraduate students, but we work with students. If any of you participated in the Terp Young Scholars Program, so before you stepped foot on this campus and were enrolled in college classes as a high school student, all the way through, you want to do PhD level work or other forms of master's level work, all of that would be facilitated with ADS. Next slide, please, Emily. And so even though the academic side of the house is a lot of the work we do, we also facilitate accommodations in many, many different areas. And so Emily talked a lot about the various places on campus that she has worked to help make accessibility be a forefront. And so when it comes to campus access, we work with a lot of the same partners. So I want to make sure that when someone has shown up on the first day of class, that they actually can get into the room, that they can have the furniture that they need. And or I'll pick on chemistry, right? If you're using chemicals in the hood vent, right? That you can have you're in a room that has an adjustable based hood. And so we have many campus partners that help ensure that you can either navigate campus and or when you arrive, that the room is equipped with anything that you need to ensure that you have access needs. Just by show of hands, do any of you currently live in any of the residence halls on campus? I'm going through here. I see a couple hands. ADS, we also partner with the Department of Res Life to establish disability accommodations for students who live within the residence halls. And so ultimately, what we do in that process is we determine what accommodation would be reasonable. And then ultimately, what we do is communicate that to Res Life, and then they work exclusively with those students regarding the individual placement across all of the residence halls on campus. And then last but least, I have here the other areas, and that's really just because I never know and students never know where else they may need some form of accommodation. So know that we work with everybody all over campus to help ensure students' accommodation needs are met. Next slide. I thought it would be helpful in this presentation today to just walk you through a registration process. So again, if you are going to refer someone to ADS, you can have the context of what does it mean to kind of go through that process to get set up with accommodations for the first time. Next slide, please. So ultimately, what I want you to know is that when somebody wants to work with ADS, it's their choice to do so. The admissions office will not contact ADS and disclose that someone wrote a fabulous admissions essay. If you disclose to your academic advisor, or maybe you're working with Emily on a really cool campus project and you disclose your identity to Emily, that information is not given to ADS There is no flag, marker, or indicator in any of your student record system. So think of ELMS, think of Testudo, you ask for your transcript. There's no flag, star, or indicator that you are a person with a disability. So the only way that you can connect with ADS is if you personally decide to do so. And how they do that is we have a form, we call it a registration application. And what it is, it's a series of questions that folks answer that get you to think about your disability yourself. What do you believe your disability is? Have you used accommodations in the past? Are they helpful to you? Are you currently in any treatment or have medication needs or concerns? And what we do is we collect that self-report in writing because we acknowledge sometimes for students or any individual, it can be easier to communicate needs via writing. But then we also, you'll see at this middle bucket here, have a meeting with a disability specialist, because on the flip side of that, there are some people where written communication is not the way that they can most articulately describe what the impact is. And so we have the ability to have a meeting with someone where we can ask targeted follow-up questions about how they believe their disability impacts them. We also give people the opportunity to provide supporting disability documentation. This could be something from your primary care physician. This could be something from a mental health provider. This could be a copy of an IEP or 504, as I mentioned, those K through 12 settings of using disability accommodations there. But this well-rounded approach, it's not one of these ways more than the other. We take all of this information into consideration so that my office can understand how does the disability impact you and what barriers do you experience. And so the type of information we get may be more in one of these buckets than the other based on what each and every individual student comes to our offices. So please know that even though you see disability documentation here or self-report or that self-disclosure, we look at those collectively to see what the big picture is. Next slide, please. So ultimately, once the student has had an opportunity to give all of the information, we, before we officially establish accommodations, you'll see on the left hand, or it's my left, I don't know if you're looking at this, it would be your left or your right, but occasionally the staff in my office need to consult with others before we can establish disability accommodations. And I'll again give an example. If you're going to be doing a student teaching placement, we're going to need to talk with other people within your school placement and your advisor to make sure that we understand what are the expectations of all students in that particular placement and that we can communicate what has been approved to those people. But ultimately, when we establish disability accommodations, I want you to know when we create a formal document, we call it an accommodation letter, and that's where people are able to see what has been approved. We never include in that formal paperwork anything that we either the student said no thank you and declined themselves, or all of the things that Emily went through before about fundamental alteration or essential elements if we do have to find a different form of accommodation. So know that that letter only communicates what has been approved, and any of the interactive process or iterations of that is not included in that final letter. Emily, next slide, please. So now that folks kind of have a high level of the process of establishing accommodations, I'm going to stay high level and just highlight some important information to know about using them. Okay, next slide. Thank you, Emily. So first and foremost is that if you or someone you know has a disability, there is no requirement to disclose or register or connect with ADS. If you or someone you know has no need for disability accommodations, as Emily talked about, more things of being universally designed, you can rock and roll your entire college experience and never notify me or anyone in my office, and that's totally fine. Emily also kind of talked about these last two pieces here, but I wanted to again highlight there's no deadline to register with our office. So you can register with us before classes begin. You can register with us during final exams. We never stop registering folks. And as I'm presenting to you today, there's about 9% of campus total population that is registered with ADS. And that number has grown significantly in the past couple of years. And I personally equate that directly to our increase in staffing to be able to really work with everybody. But if you look at national averages or things where, Emily, you might correct me if I'm wrong here, but around 28, 27% of folks of traditional college age, according to national data, may have a disability. And so it's, again, it's a personal choice to register with us. But if you think about, that's almost 30% of the total American population. Um, so then, how am I on time here? So ultimately, I will leave you with some kind of corny analogies because I think they're helpful to help people remember things. But ultimately, when it comes to disability accommodations, I want you to think of it either like your driver's license, or if you want to go on a fun vacation somewhere. You are always eligible once we formalize what your accommodations are. No one takes that away from you. You're always eligible to use them, but to actually implement them, you have to make an informed choice to say, I want to use. My office will not force you to use it. Faculty cannot force you to use it. And so I'll just give a quick example. If you're approved to have extra time for testing, if you have 4 exams, you get to make a choice. Do you want to use extra time on all 4 of those exams? Or maybe exam 1, you want to say, no, thank you. I want to try no extra time needed. And so truly your accommodation letter is like a driver's license or like a passport. You've set it up that you've gone through the channels and these things are available to you, but only you as the individual can decide to use them. And so the last slide that I have here is really about additional support. Every student who registers with ADS has an assigned disability specialist where that is really your case manager. So you need to go back and update your accommodations. You need to go back and talk with them just to check in and say hello. Or if there's any issues, questions, concerns, problems, these are the people you go to immediately, and they'll be the ones to work with you and walk alongside you to resolve any of those items. And then I highlight here the ADS leadership team. That includes myself and the assistant directors and a couple other coordinators across all of those areas that I started with before. But ultimately, I want you to know that we cannot read minds. And so we are here to walk alongside you, but we'll never force you to use your accommodations. And it's also important to know we don't have access to your grades or how you're doing. So please be sure to maintain open lines of communication with us so that we can be partners with you as you navigate your college journey. And so with that, I've highlighted some general contact information here. And then Emily has kind of and I really work together. And my work is really in the uh, compliance, but both Emily and I, if you want to go to the next slide, Emily, we really want to move away from like, let's just meet the letter of the law and kind of really focus on what does it mean to have equal access. And so Emily had found some really great graphics that I think explain this fabulously. So
And it
Emily,
really
I don't know
uses
if you want to
100
take
times my
over for
group.
the last
Sure.
couple graphics here.
Yeah, sure. So earlier I mentioned about the concept of universal design. So how do we shift from this idea of compliance more to a mold of equal access, where we make things accessible from the beginning? And I'm going to show you a couple pictures that I think explain this really well. So here you have a picture of 3 people watching a soccer game of all different heights, of all standing on the same size box to support them to see over the fence. However, one of them obviously is tall enough to probably see over the fence without the support The second one in the middle might need the support, and the one on the end, even with the support, still can't see over the fence. So the assumption is that everyone benefits from the same support, and that's considered equal treatment. Then there's equity. And again, you see the same three people, and as I mentioned, one does not need the support, one only needs one, and the third person needs two, and now all three of them can see over the fence, right? So individuals are given different support to make it possible for them to have equal access to the game, thus producing equity. And that's what we do with accommodations, right? We are designing something that's not accessible like the fence or our courses, right? But then we are providing them an accommodation that makes it equitable. So then I want you to think about justice. This is a new design, right? Without a solid fence. It's got a fence that everyone can see through. So all three can see the game without supports or accommodations. Because the cause of the inequity was addressed and the systemic barrier has been removed. So that's universally designed. And so that's really the idea of universal design. There's a lot of different examples I can give. Like, for example, putting captioning up in all of the classes, like we talked about earlier. And I apologize, I had to take them down because I realized it was only working with my mic. And when we switched to Tessa, it wasn't coming up. So I took them down. But that's one option. I think a lot of people, we have note takers for a lot of students with disabilities. What if all the notes were available to everybody? What if all the classes are recorded and there was always a transcript and we had transcripts for everything? Then, would we need note takers for students with disabilities? No, because everyone would have a copy of the transcript. The other example I'm going to show you is very appropriate for today. This is one of my favorite cartoons. I threw it in here at the last minute since we had a snow day today, but you'll see a group of students waiting outside a school building, and there's a custodial worker shoveling the stairs. And the individual in the wheelchair says, "Could you please shovel the ramp?" And the custodial worker says, "All these other kids are waiting to use the stairs. When I get through shoveling them off, I will clear the ramp for you." And the kid says, "But if you shovel the ramp, then we can all get in." Right? When we designed buildings and we made ramps, that's one way for everybody to get in is up the ramp. But again, I want to highlight the fact that it's not the basis of universal design. It actually segregates people because you're telling people with disabilities they can go in one way and people without disabilities can go in another. So what we'd like to do at some point in time is design all buildings where there's a flat level entrance in with an automatic overhead door sensor that everybody can go in, whether you're using a wheelchair, a stroller, carrying books, whatever. So on that note, I want to say thank you very much. And Tess and I are happy to answer questions if there's time.
Yay, thank you guys so much. If anyone has questions, you can use the raise hand feature. Go ahead, Rishi.
Yeah, thank you, Emily and Tessa, for your presentations. So my name is Rishi. I'm a CMNS representative. And it's interesting that I saw the graphic about equality versus equity versus justice at the end. In fact, I actually saw it in my professional writing class just on Monday when the professor put it up, when we were discussing audiences. So I just want to ask Emily, this might be a question for you, but it seems to be like equity is a necessary stepping stone to eventually get to justice and this kind of universal design. How would you see the gradual shift in implementation?
Okay, sorry, it wasn't letting me unmute. Sorry, it said the host disabled the ability to unmute. So sorry about that. Um, that's a really good question. I think you're right. I think that it is a stepping stone. Obviously it's hard to go from A to Z without B through X or Y in the middle, right? So I think it is a stepping stone, but I think we have to take baby steps. And I think the biggest thing we can help everyone understand is that what we're doing when we talk about this is making it accessible for everybody and not just people with disabilities. And that, all of us at some point in time in our lives may be impacted by a disability, whether we break our leg, whether we, get something in our eye and lose our sight temporarily, or, maybe we lose our hearing for some reason or another, or maybe, we have some other issue that happens, or maybe we know somebody who ages and has a disability due to aging, right? So I think that the key thing is helping people understand that while it is a stepping stone, It doesn't have to be necessarily. And what we just want to help people understand is to start thinking about it more holistically. So when you design your classes, think about it. How do I design this for all types of learners? How do I design this for all types of people with disabilities? How do I design this building so that we are making it universally available for everyone in every type of disability? I hope that sort of answers your question.
Yeah, that answers it. Thank you.
Are there any other questions out there? Go ahead, Leonard.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Emily and Tessa, for your presentation. So we're very fortunate to have a very big campus in terms of lots of different people from lots of different backgrounds, including a lot of international students that are on campus. So I don't know if you touched on it in your presentation, but I was wondering if you could touch a little bit on like how that population is being targeted in terms of offering the resources to them if they need them, whether it's translation or whether it's any of the accessibility resources that you just talked about. I remember when I was a first-time legislator that I was trying to figure out how to get translation services into a meeting like this with so many people. And for some reason, the only option that I found was to go through like a language department or through like a third-party resource where you actually had to pay money to get them in, and it was actually quite expensive, like the translation for the transcripts. So I was wondering if you guys could touch on that a little bit.
I can speak, I'll say from a high level. So having English not be your first language, I would, and the need for foreign language transcription definitely falls more into universal access than it does disability access. I can say that there has been, again, I report to the Division of Student Affairs, and so there has been intentional effort on the student affairs side to be able to provide um, multi-language of different announcements and things like that. I will say for the ADS side, we have a fabulous relationship with ISSS. We work with them very closely. And we also try and make ourselves available to students, not only who they are here studying internationally over a multi-year period, but even just think of our own education abroad office. So we have great partners with all of them to make sure that their students are aware that ADS exists, because disability laws in different countries may be vastly different. And so we try and make sure that those students are aware of ADS and our services. But I don't know, Emily, if you have any insight or on foreign language transcription services aside from like the Foreign Language Institute on campus.
Yes, aside from that, what I can share with you is that the health center and the police do use a service that they've contracted with to assist anybody who has a language barrier in using their services. So those two have access to that. I don't know about campus wide. Again, this is foreign language is not something that's considered a disability, as Tessa said. So, it's not something we would, either one of our offices would handle. But there are, I think that it's certainly something we should be paying more attention to and figuring out how we do that. But that wouldn't come from either one of our offices. So I think we'd have to figure out where that could come from. The service that the health center and the police use does have language access for multiple languages, but also sign language as well, which is why I know about it.
Thank you.
Awesome. Lindsay, do you want to go?
Yes, thank you, Chelsea. Thank you both for speaking with us. My name is Lindsay. I'm one of the directors of academic affairs. I just had a question relating to current kind of politics and especially recent executive orders targeting DEI. I was curious if you envision the university or universities around the nation facing challenges with providing the same resources for students with disabilities, and if so, how can we as a advocating body help to provide those resources?
So I'll take that, and I appreciate the question. So, currently we do not see a direct impact to higher education. That I will say up front, right? It is something we are watching very, very carefully because from day to day, we don't know what's happening. But I think that it's something we're watching very carefully is what I can say about that. What the other thing I will add to that is that just today, there is a case we are all watching very, very, very closely that could impact Section 504. There was a webinar today about this because there are, I think, 14 states now have signed on to a request to abolish Section 504. Which would be a huge impact to not only higher education, but primary and secondary education as well. And so there's an organization called DREDF, DREDF. I can put the website in the chat if you want to learn more about this. But that's where I would go to find information about it. It's called Texas versus Becerra is the case. And there's a website that has all the information on it. So if this is something you want to learn more about it, but again, this is not necessarily directly from the current administration. This is a subset impact because of the way the shift in the country is going right now.
I will also say, so just for context, if you're questioning what is Section 504, Section 504 comes from the Rehabilitation Act, is specifically Section 504. And so in the education space, in K through 12, that's how you get a 504 plan. Stems from that legislation, just to kind of connect the dots for folks. And I will say on as Emily said, we don't necessarily, we're watching very closely, but it's not impacting higher ed right now. But as I was talking about that well-rounded approach of how we look at from self-report through documentation, as 504 and other education-based laws with the administration may or may not change. So if there is an impact, it may not impact University of Maryland students today, but as we watch, new waves of first-year students coming in, that's when we'll start to feel the effect. So not immediately, but as people transfer in, because in the K through 12 system, the school district again is responsible for a lot of that. Emily, I don't know if you wanted to add anything else.
Yeah, just real quickly, I would agree 100% with Tessa's last statement is that's where I see the impact happening is in the long term. But keep in mind, we live in a state where the governor is very supportive of our efforts. So, again, I don't see any immediate impacts. But just to add to Tessa saying just about explanation of Section 504, it's 100% an anti-discrimination law. So Section 504 plainly says you cannot discriminate against somebody with a disability. So that's what they're targeting, along with some of the other stuff that we've heard before. But that case is particularly targeting that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ben, do you want to go?
Yeah. Thank you both for coming and speaking with us. So I just had a question relating to something that you guys said previously about instructors recording their lectures. I know that this can be extremely useful for accessibility, especially if a student is sick or simply cannot attend class. So is your office doing anything to maximize the amount of instructors that are recording their lectures? Because I know right now it's up to the discretion of that instructor.
I can start on that. We live in something called a two-party state. And so oftentimes faculty will quote laws and legislation related to needing consent from all to record. And so when it comes to implementing disability accommodations, my office, we work directly with faculty to do a lot of educating, and Emily does, we partner a lot on educating in this space to help faculty understand that preventing recordings as a form of accommodation, concerns about two-party states and or their own academic freedom or desire to just not be recorded. We work with faculty to address all of those. In past years, I had been involved with a couple of initiatives with previous SGA members where we were kind of working with the provost on exploring that very question that you're posing. Kind of what can we do to help elevate the benefit of having recorded lectures available to all students, for not just students with disabilities. But I will preference the recordings I am talking about are not video-based recordings, or it would be like you're in the room, like think of old school, like you have a tape recorder and you're recording the audio is what accommodations are. But I do know past um, I guess legislative bodies there in SGA had gone to the provost with this very issue. And I think what the result was a lot of things that coming out of TLTC. So a lot of information about the benefits to learning, being able to point to how students having access to that information could contribute to their own learning and mastery of material. But to my knowledge, it was never adopted as a mandate across all disciplines. Emily, I don't know if since your time on campus, if you've been involved in any of those conversations.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it, but I don't have anything significant to add to that other than, I think that it's something we really should look more closely at because there's a lot of different things that impact this, right? A lot of people are concerned about um, proprietary information and their ability to save the work that they're doing. So, I think a lot of times when we have recordings, there has to be some sort of agreement in there that says, what will the recording be used for, making sure it doesn't end up on social media, because I know that's a big concern, right? Making sure that the individual who's using it has an absolute need to use it and also agrees at the end of the semester to delete it and not use it for personal gain. So there's a lot of different things we need to look at it from a legal standpoint as well. But I definitely think it's worth talking more about and seeing what we can do to enhance that.
But I would say it's a great, as you were thinking about that justice and universal design, it definitely aligns very much so in that bucket.
Thank you. Does anyone have any other questions? Okay, I don't think so, but thank you guys so much for coming and speaking with us. Really appreciate it, and I'm sure you'll probably hear from some of our legislators or officers sometime soon.
Thank you so much for
yeah,
having us.
Yeah, and
yeah, of course.
I'll just say for everybody, I truly believe this. There is no such thing as a silly or stupid question. So if you think of something or just want to pick, Emily, I'm lumping you in with me. Pick either of our brains. Like don't
Fine.
hesitate to do so. There truly is no such thing as a silly or stupid question. I meet with Reese regularly. And so pass things along. Or say hello yourself. Our contact information was there.
Thank you guys so much again. Unfortunately, we can't do a big round of applause.
Yeah.
I think that would be a little chaotic, but
Yeah.
doing the air. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you all very much. Have a good night.
You too.
Everybody.
Alrighty, next order of business is, I think, what everyone's been waiting for, the EVP special election. Right before we start, Leonard has to do something procedurally. Go ahead, Leonard.
Yes, so this is, I guess, a point of personal privilege. At this time, well, when the nominations were due last night, I did enter my name for consideration. So in accordance with the bylaws, that means that I can no longer be the one who's supervising the count for the election. So at this time, in subsection E for the vice presidential role, for 2G, it says that I'm supposed to appoint a replacement to do my role, and that has to be confirmed by the legislature. So at this time, I'm going to appoint Maya to be my replacement. And I have a folder with all the ballots and all the nominations in the question order that I made that I was planning on using if I was going to be on counting the roll. So I have shared that with her. And after we vote, I'll be transferring the ownership. So I won't be looking at any thoughts.
Thank you, Leonard. And like he said, this is the role that would just is kind of logistical. This person will check with I believe it's Joe, our advisor, and the governance board, Simone, to just verify the results. But this does require subject confirmation by the legislature. So at this time, we will move into a period of voting for Maya to take over Leonard's spot there. And remember, just for all the guests here, legislators are the only people who vote. But can I just see all of those in favor of this confirmation? And you can please use the raise hand feature because I might not see if you're just like putting your hand up. Oh, this is gonna be even harder to count than in person. Okay.
If you toggle on the participants, Chelsea, it'll show you in the top right, like the number of people with their hands.
That's so amazing. Okay, thank you. Wonderful. Can I see all of those then opposed? So please, everyone, take your hand down. Okay, and then can I see anyone abstaining? Okay, amazing. Diego, do you mind putting your hand down? Thank you. Okay, this confirmation passes. Wonderful. Maya will now be just confirming the results. Amazing. And at this time, I will also be asking each nominee if they accept their nomination. And the way we're doing it is just alphabetical by first name, based off the form Leonard gave us. But obviously after that, if anyone wants to nominate anyone, officers can. But first, can I see Aiden, do you accept your nomination?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And then Elise, do you accept your nomination?
Yes.
Thank you. Leonard, do you accept your nomination?
Yes.
Thank you. Nick, do you accept your nomination?
Yes.
Thank you. Paisley, do you accept your nomination?
Yes.
Thank you. And then Siley, do you accept your nomination?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Wonderful. If no one has anything to add, the way this is going to go is that each person in that same order is going to get 2 minutes to speak. And then what I'll do is I'll probably just give a little reaction if you're going over time and give you like a 5-second buffer period. But then if we want to, Aiden, you can start first. And also, sorry, we'll let all this VP nominees speak, and then afterwards we will move on to questions. And remembering that one question goes to every candidate. So Aiden can start us off.
Great. All right. Hey, everyone. I just want to say a quick thank you to everyone here for your consideration and voting for me to become the next executive vice president. Seeing myself here among so many qualified candidates is a very gratifying experience, and I look forward to seeing us move forward no matter the outcome. That being said, given this position is one that would only last a semester, I wanted to focus on, along with continuing the work of Reese's proposals for a smoother transition, amplifying the connection between us and the student body. I'm sure that you all can relate when I tell you that when I talk to anyone external to our organization about the SGA, that the first response is usually along the lines of, "What's that?" or to the observation that our voter turnout is directly related to the more contentious bills introduced here. People are so focused on what we do when it happens to the point of not realizing what we can do. So through more direct and personal outreach to student groups, including those that may feel disenfranchised by our organization, the implementation of a student body newsletter and an awareness campaign of what the SGA stands for, and a more open discussion between us and students on issues that remain impactful, I see the perfect opportunity for a campus of 30,000 undergraduate students to feel heard and to engage with the community we can help foster. I've experimented with the best ways to reach out to people regarding the SGA and inspire them through other student groups and social settings. I've experienced the benefits of open communication on relevant and contentious issues, and I'm confident that I can bring my skills and these experiences to this position to ensure effective representation of the entire student body. To reiterate, as this position is one that would only last a semester, I see it as a way for whoever the next and the foreseeable future's administration will be to ensure awareness of this organization, to move forward with meaningful and impactful initiatives, and most importantly, to fulfill the SGA mission statement and establish a community within our campus. Thanks again for your consideration, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you, Eden. We will be moving on to our next speaker, Elise.
Great. Hello, my name is Elise Donnellan. I use she, her, hers pronouns. I am a senior environmental science and policy major with a concentration in environmental politics and policy. A little bit about me, since I don't know all of you guys on Ledge this year, but I'm originally from Chicago, and I moved to Maryland for college 4 years ago, coming to UMD. I've been a member of the SGA since the end of my freshman year, serving on the legislature as the Greek residential representative. Last year, I also served as the coordinator of recruitment and retention, which led me to run with Ian Gold for executive vice president. I took losing the election as a sign to reprioritize my health and schoolwork, which honestly was the best thing to ever happen to me. In the moment, I may not have known that, but here we are now. I know that that was absolutely the best case forward. Last summer, after receiving a call from Ian that him and I were being considered for sustainability directors, I couldn't be more excited to rejoin the organization and continue serving the UMD community. It was really hard to say goodbye for a little bit, but I have loved and adored this role as sustainability director, regardless of the outcome of this election. I will continue the projects and responsibilities of this sustainability committee. Ugh, sorry. When I ran last year, I believed I had the institutional knowledge, capability, and passion to serve as EVP. Between the summer and last semester, I've been able to strengthen these areas while prioritizing the well-being of myself and other SGA members. So if elected, I would be able to provide a smooth transition, ensuring the SGA is not and community is not burdened by a change in leadership, taking over the advisory boards, ethics, room bookings, anything that Reese just dropped in the chat. Those are things that I had looked at last year to make sure that I would be capable of doing that when I decided to run. And lastly, I'm just so incredibly grateful and appreciative of this nomination from the members of Ledge, anybody that's reached out to me. I'm just so honored, to know that you guys see this passion, see this drive and commitment that I have. But like I said, regardless, everything will work out. Thank you, Chels.
Thank you, Elise. Next up is Leonard.
Perfect. Good evening, legislators. Thank you for your attention and consideration of my candidacy for EVP. To make your decision tonight, you're likely looking for answers to 3 specific questions. What makes them qualified? What makes this candidate different from the next? And what will they bring to the table? I'm ready to answer all 3 of these questions and any more that you'll have this evening. First and foremost, what makes me qualified for this role? I have served in the legislature for almost 2 years, this past year as the pro temp. In this position, I have been responsible for the orientation of new legislators, the construction of meaningful relationships with legislators, while clearly communicating all things that are happening in the organization. One of the biggest skills that I've learned while being in this position is how to be adaptable. Pro temp requires concentration to things that are happening outside of the org, as well as internally. There's a lot on the back end in terms of constructing office hours, mandatory events, and keeping track of all records. But above all, the biggest thing that the pro temp is responsible for is being part of the collaboration between the executive and legislative branch. In essence, what the EVP is supposed to be doing. I've been fortunate to collaborate with Gannon on things like the committee schedule. I've been fortunate to collaborate with directors on things like legislative processes and legislative priorities, something that I intend to do in this role. To my second question on what motivated me to be interested in this role and why I'm different from the other candidates is because I'm interested in bridging the disconnect that exists between the 3 branches. I strongly believe that the legislative branch is passionate about creating initiatives, as I've been able to learn through reading office hour reports and talking with all 30 something of you in the ledge. But I've also been able to collaborate with exec as well as the financial branch. So I think that there's a lot of opportunities to continue that intersection and growth all together. So I hope that you choose me to your EVP to create this intersection and continue having a great semester. Thank you.
Thank you, Leonard. We will now move on to Nick.
Hello, everyone. It is an absolute honor to be speaking to you all in this capacity today and to being on the stage with these other fantastic candidates. For those of you who don't know, my name is Nick DeSpirito. I'm a sophomore public policy major at the school. For a sophomore public policy major at this school, and my background traditionally for right now is I work for Senator Van Hollen and Montgomery County Council member Evan Glass, but that's not what drove the drive that chose me to pursue social change on campus. In freshman year, when there was a tragedy from a student, I was an RHA president, and in that role, in that capacity, I was just told to make community events, but I knew that me and the council wanted to do more. So effectively, we worked together to establish the first mental health RHA committee on campus, and I took this drive into the Health and Wellness Committee going forward, where I work to pursue vetted services for nonprofits and pro bono counseling for low-income students, for referrals with the counseling center. But even from my short time in the SGA, I have come to realize that one of the biggest disparities is the way we outreach our information. So as elected as EVP, one of the biggest priorities for me would be revitalizing how we outreach the student body, revitalizing our newsletter to reach more student orgs, strengthening our collaborative structures with the RHA and advocacy groups we have on campus, and creating a monthly town hall space for student organizations to stay informed and updated. At the same time, platforming the policies that legislators have themselves. I've always heard of fantastic policies that people are coming out of with committees and ensuring that they're having the right resources and conversations with administration to get those done. Whether that be counseling, revitalizing the counseling center website, or something I heard earlier today, which was fantastic, which was discounted UPass for WMATA. Those sort of things would be a priority for me to platform to put and highlight the voices of our legislators. And at the same time, continuing a smooth transition, working with the student body president. I hope you consider my application. So.
Thank you. Next up, we will have Paisley.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for your time and consideration this evening. I wanted to start off by telling you a bit about myself. I'm a senior neurophys major with a Spanish minor, and I'm on the pre-med track, and I'm originally from Maryland. Over the past 4 years, I have been so grateful and so fortunate to be a part of this org and to grow both as a person and as a leader through many setbacks and trying to persevere through them. I started on SGA my fall of freshman year as the first rep of Heritage Community. And in that position, I worked on projects like expanding bike parking and career readiness. And those really helped me learn how to navigate the bureaucracy of the university and how to make tangible change through things like FM and having those communications with deans and administrators on my own. I have stayed on top of the SROs and the bylaws and constitution, so that keeps me knowledgeable on procedures and expectations of all of the branches. However, I do recognize that the ledge that I was on is very different from the one that we have in front of us because this awesome org just keeps continuing to grow and change and meet student needs better. And I hope that if elected, I can do the same for you all. I would look forward to working with you all and with the parliamentarian and all other people in SGA to update bylaws, to increase connections, and to make things uniform so we can be efficient and impactful. In my sophomore year, the Committee on T&I was created and I was named the first director. And I've served on the Campus Transportation Advisory Committee, attended university cabinet meetings, and conducted the inaugural accessibility audit. And yeah, I hope you guys got to see a bit of my work through my resume. Finally, I wanted to spend some time on some of my values and possible initiatives. If elected, I want to prioritize transparent communication between the exec branch and the ledge branch to streamline our initiative work with legislators as initiative creators and executive as mentors and facilitators for those initiatives. I would also like to bring back regular workshops on things like admin contacts, meetings, and our governing docs, and even one-on-ones with legislators. I look forward to chatting more with all of you, and best of luck to all candidates here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. And then last up, we have Siley.
Hi everyone, my name is Siley Korjakar. I'm a junior public health science major and law and society minor. I'm here today because I truly believe in representing every student's voice and kind of expanding my skill set beyond the health and wellness realm. As the current co-director of health and wellness, a big goal of mine has really been to bridge the gap between mental, physical, and nutritional health and reaching out to student groups. I think we have some insanely qualified candidates today, but one thing that does set me apart is my involvement outside of SGA. I'm involved in so many organizations, from public health groups to being a TA, cultural groups like Marilyn Menza, and sports like pickleball. I definitely understand the needs of students from different areas, and I want to bring that holistic approach to being EVP. Whether it's through increasing accessibility, having a multicultural event, incorporating specific trainings for undergraduate TAs, or even expanding awareness on programs that already exist. I want this to be collaborative and driven by listening to students and working with legislators to really get things done. By having the SGA and student group perspective, I also understand the importance of impartiality and kind of understanding both sides of the story. If elected, I would love to further promote the campus pantry and its cooking classes to really reduce the food insecurity and work for my Recre Brox project for physical activity. I also reached out to the directors of DEI and plan to work with UHC and DEI to kind of create that comprehensive guide for resources for trans and queer students in light of the recent executive orders. Additionally, I think collaborating with other committees like SMP for a bystander intervention training or even sustainability and TNI would reach more students. Again, I'm not here to push my own agenda, nor am I here to focus solely on health and wellness. I think it's really important about working with every committee, listening to you guys, and getting things done. So while I'm very knowledgeable in one area, I'm definitely confident that those skills are very transferable. As I'm very organized, proactive, and ready to take on any challenge. Together, I think we can create a real change because I think 50 our heads together are better than just one. Thank you so much again, and I look forward to answering any of your questions.
Thank you, Siley. Thank you, everyone. So now we will move into questions, and the way the order is going to work is we're going to go in the same order that we went for speaking first, and then for the second question, we'll start with the second person. So just as a reminder, the first order will go Aiden, Elise, Leonard, Nick, Paisley, and Siley, and I can remind you too. And as of right now, the question responses are also limited to 30 seconds, which I'll do like the raise hand feature, but I'll also try not to cut you off right in the middle of a thought, but just try to wrap it up when I do that. So we can start with questions. Go ahead, Isha.
Hi guys, you guys all did amazing, and I think you guys are all super duper qualified. And sorry for not having my camera on. I'm feeling a little bit under the weather. But the question I have is a lot of you guys mentioned like your various time commitments and just the amount of things that you guys are doing both in SGA and outside of SGA as well. How are you guys going to be able to balance the duties of EVP with all of the other things you guys have going on?
Thank you. And Aiden will go first.
So I myself, yes, I'm an engineering representative and engineering major. This semester by far has been my easiest. I do have a lot of availability. So there's no doubt in my mind that I'd be able to commit the time that I would want to and need to commit to EVP position. This is also a passion of mine, kind of the leadership. I've been working with a lot of students and teachers throughout my time at the university. So being on SGA, having this opportunity, I would no doubt in my mind have put the time towards this.
Thank you. Elise will go next.
Thank you so much, Isha, for that question. So my current course load, since I am in my final semester, hopefully, graduating this spring, my courses are stacked pretty much Tuesday and Thursday. I'm taking a standard course load. Outside of that, there's not much else. Yes, there's my capstone project, which does take up a lot of my time, but other than that, I am involved with my sorority. I am currently our wellness chair. I've considered taking a step back if needed.
Thank you. And then Leonard.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for that question. So in terms of balancing, pro temp is all about balancing. And pro temp, in addition to R&R, is one of the few positions where you do have to balance the legislative duty with the leadership duty. And I've been doing that the entire semester. Outside of SGA, I'm taking 4 classes and I have an internship, so that's not too bad. I can definitely accommodate an additional activity. And plus, I'd be giving up the pro temp and the BSAC. I'm also actively involved in DSAC, but that's only once a week. So in general, as I mentioned, my role has always been about balancing things, whether it's doing leadership and administrative stuff on this side and doing legislative stuff with BSAS on the other side.
And then next up, Nick.
Yeah, thanks so much for that question, Isha. In terms of my schedule and workload, it's a lot more flexible this semester. The internship that I have as well is also remote, so it's very flexible to carry out all the duties of this, especially because a lot of my course load is also towards the nighttime, especially a lot of these advisory committees and things like that are during the work business hours. Most of my schedule is free during that, which is a really important aspect depending on what I'm delegated to do by the student body president. But in general, a lot of the stuff that I'm bringing for the platform is related to platforming initiatives by others. So a lot of that time commitment is related to an assistive structure between me and a legislature and helping them out. So thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Paisley.
Yeah, so I'm sure as you've seen from my GBM updates, TNI is a very widespread committee, and it really has forced me to learn how to time manage. I do also have 2 jobs, but those are very flexible, and one of them is like show up as needed. The other is max 10 hours a week. So if needed, I would definitely take a step back from those to focus on the student body. But I do believe I'm confident that I'm able to balance my schedule.
Thank you. And then last up, Siley.
Thank you so much for your question. So last semester I was taking 22 credits while being co-director, which sounds insane, but I did it. I went to every single meeting, didn't miss a thing. This semester, unfortunately, my internship dropped me because of the executive order. So now I have 2 days completely off. A couple of my like dance comp, like e-boards that I was on are also done, finished last weekend. I'm also the strongest advocate for Google Calendar. Like my life lives on that. I have planned when I eat, when I sleep, everything. So trust me, I can fill in any slot. I'm very flexible. And yeah, thank you again.
Thank you guys. You all stayed within the time limit. Amazing. Can I see any additional questions? Alrighty, looks like we don't have any additional questions. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, okay. Oh, psych. Go ahead, Ben.
Hey, sorry, couldn't figure out the hand thing. Um, so I guess this is a question that the committee directors and the legislators might answer a bit differently, but I guess just like try, and if it's confusing, let me know. But what is an initiative that you would like to pursue that's not related to your current committee? Or if you're a legislator, not related to a committee that you're currently on?
Alrighty, so then this one will go Elise, Leonard, Nick, Paisley, Siley, Aiden, and then so we'll start with Elise.
Thank you so much for that question, Ben. That was very good. My first thought is sexual misconduct prevention. That if I were not sustainability, I would have really hoped that I could be a more involved member of SMP. Now, I don't have a very specific answer for you in terms of initiatives because my main concern at the moment is making sure that SMP is well supported and able to carry out their normal functions, as well as the other committees that we currently have going. So CivGov is a big one as well, helping out with Ice Cream Day and our federal initiatives. Thank you.
Amazing. Next up is Leonard.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that question. So one of the committees that I'm not in at the moment is academic affairs, and boy, do I have initiatives for that committee. 2 that come right off the bat are increasing the number of syllabi that exist in the syllabi repository, creating some kind of policy or advocacy movement to get professors and instructors, TAs even, to put them into the file because students deserve to know what kind of class they're enrolling. And if you don't have syllabi to look at, then how are you going to do that? The second initiative for academics would be a test bank that does exist for the math department, but not for other classes. And I think that's also important for students to get a feel of classes and prepare adequately for exams.
Thank you. Next up is Nick.
Ben, fantastic question. So yeah, so there's a variety of different things, looking also at like student affairs with student groups. I talked about revitalizing the newsletter, but also incorporate comms as well, to make sure that we're getting that out and getting out information about stuff that we're doing here to the student body, but also about the idea of establishing a once a month town hall forum kind of event to allow for student groups to come to, speak to SGA members, be informed about what's happening on campus. But in general, there's a lot of fantastic ideas I've thought about as well, and people presented here too about the discounted U-Pass. So working with legislators on their initiatives.
Thank you. Next up is Paisley.
Thank you so much for that question. So I kind of have a double to this. So internally, like I mentioned, I would really like to do some initiatives that really connect directors with legislators, both in their committees and not in their committees. I think there's a great opportunity for mentorship there. I learned a lot from directors when I was a legislator. And then externally, something that I'm already working on with a bunch of other CAB directors is the federal funding freeze and trying to really protect our students, let them know what resources they have, and just protecting them.
Oh, I was muted. Okay. Next up is Siley. Sorry.
Great question, Ben. In terms of like for other committees, I was definitely interested, especially for SMP, like a bystander intervention training. I think it's really important to kind of like emphasize on that, as well as training for UTAs in terms of sexual misconduct. I'm a UTA. I have no training whatsoever. Like we've never gone through any of that, which I think is super important. And then actually initiative you were talking about with the work order, like having a live update of what's going on to see what's prioritized. I thought that was really interesting, and I feel like students would really benefit that, especially for their residential hall. But thank you again.
Thank you. And then last up is Aiden.
So like Leonard, my focus was more on the academic affairs side of things. This semester, I've been working closely as it pertains to my major to the engineering ethics class, which recently became a required class for engineers. I've been working with the head of the department for that. And we started to implement change this semester to make it more applicable to students. And so far it's been successful. So it's really cool to see that change in place. But academic affairs for me, that's one of the initiatives I've been working on for the past month and a half or so, 2 months. But yeah.
Thank you, everyone. We made it through the second round. Does anyone else have any questions? Any other legislators out there? Go ahead, Grant.
Hi all. Sorry. Hi all. It sounds like you all have great initiatives. This is kind of going off of Ben's question a little bit. The reality is that this position is going to be kind of a short one, shorter than usual for EVP. It's going to be only around 2 months. So I was wondering how you all would handle that, the 2 month turnaround.
Thank you, Graham. This next order will go Leonard, Nick, Paisley, Siley, Aiden, Elise. But Leonard, you go first.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that question. That is definitely something that's important to consider. My philosophy to answer this question is things that are low effort, high impact. So in addition to the academic initiatives that I mentioned, a few things we could do to just realign things internally in SGA is to do like a weekly summary initiative for each branch so that each branch knows what's going on where and is able to collaborate better. Another thing is just to generally prepare better for transition. This time around, elections come around earlier. So getting those transition docs from different branches and start working with the people that come in from the election earlier would definitely be a great way to set up yourself for success.
Thank you, Graham, for that question. Yeah, so there's a lot of aspects to look at this as well for the short term, especially a lot of it is figuring out what to be delegated with the student body president, figuring out that's like the big priority of the position or those roles and advisory boards that have to be attended to. Obviously, but beyond that, focusing on initiatives that are feasible for a 6 month time period, stuff like building off initiatives like the revitalizing the counseling center website, stuff like that have already been worked on at the moment, focusing on initiatives that already have a backbone to it, or something that we already have the structure available to be able to expand upon. That's what I would say.
Thank you. Next up is Paisley.
Thank you for that question. Yeah, it is a very short turnaround, but I would really focus on opening up my schedule so that, especially in the next couple weeks so that people could reach me, talk to me what they need, and I could accommodate for that. But I also have a lot of experience through working with other people in Ledge and the student body president. So I feel like I have a really good working relationship with most of the people in CAB. And I would really want to prioritize building that with you all in the coming weeks. And I think that my experience with staffing boards and leading them would really help in that position.
Thank you. Next up is Siley.
Thank you, Graham, for your question. I would just like to say that I started this role last semester as health and wellness co-director. I'm a very fast learner. I felt like I was able to integrate myself into this very easily. I think what Leonard said, completely agree, needs to be high impact, but more than that, I feel like we have so many programs that we've already started that students don't know about, and we have to raise awareness about that, especially the campus pantry. I know I emphasize that a lot, but I've had students be like, oh, but it's not for me, but it is for you. So kind of understanding that like we should be emphasizing on things that we kind of already have to kind of improve and build on that foundation is super important as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Aiden.
So once again, to that high impact scenario that Leonard and Siley both mentioned, a lot of what I would want to focus on is not necessarily any huge change. It would be more, listening to Reese, let the task be delegated, but also focusing on, as I mentioned before, bridging that gap between students and the SGA, not just for our current administration, but for the future ones, just to allow people to be like, yeah, I know what SGA is. This is what they can do. This is why it's important. And really just showing people for future years, not just the seniors, but everyone else, kind of how we can impact and how they can get involved.
Thank you. And then Elise.
Okay. Thank you, Graham. Something that I think does differ with me and maybe Paisley, us being, graduating seniors, only going to be here for 2 months with this term. I am not here to make any big changes. I think that if we were talking a year ago today, I would have a different answer. But as I believed in the beginning, my role is mostly supportive. I want to make sure that I am there for our committees and every single SGA member first and foremost. Thank you. I'm gonna cut it there.
Thank you all again. Do we have any more questions? Go ahead, Albra.
Hello, everyone. My question will be kind of quick. Given the nature of some of the initiatives or policies or bills that we've faced the past year, in this role, if faced with criticism or pushback on any initiative you or the executive plan to push, how would you respond as the VP?
And then this round will go Nick, Paisley, Siley, Aiden, Elise, and then Leonard. So we'll start with Nick.
Yeah, thanks, Alvaro, for that question. That's obviously something that's likely to come with the position. And I think it's also important to remember, too, that with a very diverse campus, diverse opinions, and that sort of thing as well, these sort of things for pushback or whatever that might be is kind of an inevitable kind of aspect of the job and the policy we create. I think it's about the big picture kind of thing is about promoting a culture with tolerance as well and being open-minded, having the ability to have conversations about stuff and look to find common ground, which is something we don't always see. But especially that sort of direction is the way I would like to approach it.
And then next up is Paisley.
Yeah, thank you for that question. In the past few years, I've been doing a lot of advocacy for the student body, and not always do the admin want to hear that, or they don't love that answer that I give, but it is our job to accurately and persistently report what the students need and want. And my go-to strategy is really honing in on communication and productive dialogue by listening, trying to figure out where they're coming from, and seeing if there is somehow a compromise in the middle. Thank you.
And then next up is Siley.
Thank you for your question. So this past weekend, I had a dance competition. Our venue changed within 12 hours. We had to find a new place. I had 240 dancers disliking me. It is so important to maintain that professionalism, be impartial, kind of understand where they're coming from, right? There's so many other points of view that people are going to be going through. You're working with so many diverse people. It's important to be able to think on your feet and kind of maintain a good rapport with all these students, because at the end of the day, you're serving them, you're working for them, and making sure the campus is better for them. And also having a united front with the student body president, because how you are viewed together is kind of how the students will be reflecting upon it. So working together and compromising. Thank you.
Next up is Aiden.
So one of my main philosophies is that nothing can't be solved with communication. That being said, a lot of communication is more just formed from a misunderstanding. When there's an argument and when there's any disagreement like that, it doesn't necessarily have to go towards that argument phase. You know, a disagreement just means there's room to talk. There's a misunderstanding somewhere. So really focusing from trying to change someone's mind to trying to understand their perspective is kind of that shift that I think is invaluable. And going forth with any disagreements such as that would lead to any conflict can be very avoidable by simply talking in that manner.
Next up is Elise.
A lot of you were with me on the legislature last year. Being in recruitment on ledge leadership, I felt that, to be honest, to be candid, my character was called, or my personal, internally, I was calling my own character into question many times over and over because of the high intensity and the, how complex and emotional sometimes the SGA space can be. With that, I learned so much confidence in myself as a leader and as somebody that is going to be impartial and just here to facilitate conversations. Thank you.
And then last up is Leonard.
Perfect. Thank you so much for this question. I think the two ways I would approach conflict is through professionalism and resourcefulness. So professional means not being super reactive, not trying to say something snarky back when someone says something to you, knowing how to come into it with a level head, being able to acknowledge the person's concern. And then to resourcefulness, you're not going to have all the answers in student government. There's a lot of different minds. That's why we're all together here. As Sally said, it's all about collaboration and knowing where to point someone, who to direct to. And as pro temp, I think that's one of my biggest responsibilities when people Slack me questions is knowing who to add in onto the conversation, who to email. So yeah, professionalism and resourcefulness are definitely the two best ways to handle criticism.
Thank you all. That is the end of round, whatever we're on. Is there any more questions from the legislature? Okay, so warning, we do just have to take a brief recess because we are missing our amazing Chief Justice on the Zoom. Okay, with you guys, we are going to recess for hopefully only like 5 to 10 minutes, but maybe I'll give you guys a second to get up, stretch your legs, do whatever you need to do. But we'll reconvene. Plan to be back on here around 7:55. Does that sound okay with everyone? Thank you all.
Chelsea, I'm gonna put specific folks into a breakout room. So just give me a second to throw it together.